obviously I have nothing to offer. I'm just a writer. These people are doing the hard work. And in fact, I mean, my introduction to all of this was through a mutual friend. Ellen called me and said, wouldn't it be great at the family dinner scene, which is the staple of Blue Bloods, the audience cares nothing about anything on the show except family dinner. A lot of audience members consider it science fiction that a family would actually sit down and have dinner. And she said, wouldn't it be great if they talked about this on the show? And in some ways I failed, because I got the story and I put together the story. We do, every episode we have a, Donnie Wahlberg has to chase somebody down and solve a crime, and either Will Estes has a thing, or I particularly like writing for Lynn Carriou, who plays Grandpa, just because he's a crusty old bastard and like says stuff. And then Tom Selleck comes in and harumphs, and his mustache moves around as he thinks about things. But I thought this could really be something. What I like about the show, and I had been on Special Victims Unit, which was, we didn't do a lot of character work on Special Victims Unit, which was the way the show was set up. Dick Wolf said, I don't care about the cops, all I care about is the stories. So we would develop stories that had 15, 20, 25 twists. And for the most part on television, death is just a plot twist. It's just the bad guy, you think you have the bad guy, and then he kills himself, but the murders continue. Or you finally are able to shoot to death the person who, it's just a move that you do dramatically. And when I got to, so that was the kind of stuff I was used to. When I got to Blue Bloods, they said, this is not a cop show, and I had to reorient my storytelling. On SVU, for the longest time, nobody knew who, Chris Maloney had a family that he would kind of deal with. Mariska was never allowed to have a boyfriend because she just wasn't allowed to have a personal life. There is, in case the audience didn't really want to connect with her anymore. I can tell you stories about SVU. But when I got to Blue Bloods, they said, what happens is that you have a cop scene, and then you have 2 scenes where different family members talk about the cop scene. So that was perfect for this. But in some ways, like I said, I pitched this story to the bosses, and it was about, what's interesting about that show is that there are 3, maybe 4 generations represented in the family, and around family dinner you get all these different points of view. And Lynn Carriou, who was only 7 years older than Tom Selleck, he's genetically impossible that he's his father. But he is confronting these issues more and more and more. And so I pitched an idea about Grandpa kind of doing this directly, and then it got turned into a cop story. So there were things that happened that we never got the, although in the original draft I did, but the final family dinner scene never talked about this because it became kind of a cop story. And because of time, the episode was long, we had to cut various things out of the episode. And even the justification, which I thought spoke to what Ellen and I talked about, which is just how does either a family talking about this impact the family about somebody's coming death or not being able to talk about it. So we have I put together, I think there were, 6 or 7, I think there were probably 4 or 5 beats in the story. I think we have 3 scenes. There's a middle scene that's missing where we find out that the wife really did buy pentobarbital in case she needed to help her husband along the way, which she never did. But then at the end I'll explain what was taken out of the show.
Vic was a hell of a cop.
Oh, can you stop
but
for
he would
just
be
a second?
the first to say he wasn't
forget it.
in the family. That belonged to Cole.
Oh, the Henry used to be a cop. The guy that he's eulogizing was a cop, and the guy who's eulogizing was the wife of the guy was also a cop, and Henry knew her and was friendly with her. Sorry. So when you see the wife, she was also a cop, and the dead guy's a cop, and then we find out that the children think something nefarious happened. I just like the fact that Henry kind of tried to pick her up. What's missing from that, and what was in the script, was she said Vic made a videotape because this might be an issue if somebody, and the reason he did is because his kids, when they broached the subject, simply wouldn't have the conversation, wouldn't talk. The kids were in denial about what their father was going through, and so they were unable to end up doing and they got cut for time, and it became a little bit of a cop story, which was disappointing. So that's why, I mean, there's kind of TV shows like to try to get near this, but it's difficult, and a lot of it is uninformed opinion about what they think the audience wants. You know, you can see The Fault in Our Stars, or you can see, you know, every generation there's a movie that kind of goes through this, but and you can tell that 2-hour story. On TV, you know, you're dealing with characters that you're dealing with every week. So it's difficult, which is why more people need to get out there and try to do it in a way that I was unable to.
We're going to give you another chance, though.
Oh, yes.
Many more.
Believe me, Henry's going to croak one of these days. But it was fun to do. It was fun learning about what his organization was. It was stuff that I mean, I'm as guilty as anybody else in terms of making, you know, death be just kind of a thing that you do on shows, and you don't really think about it, and you never think that every bad guy has a family, and every innocent bystander has loved ones, and henchmen have people that care about them when they die, and TV seems to just kind of mow a lot of people down. But so I got a lot of very positive and interesting feedback from this show, because people were like, oh, well, you know, most shows don't even get close to this. There is a show on Fox right now called Red Band Society about kids with cancer, and even that has generated apparently a lot of people saying, well, finally people are talking about this, and other people who've been through similar things saying this is being done in a way that's just weird. It's not. So finding out what the true facts are and trying to hew to those facts is, I mean, it remains a challenge, at least in television. So.